episode. I am super excited about this episode. I had the honor to talk to one of my favorite authors, Mirza Yawar Baig. Yawar Baig has dedicated his life training people and organization about leadership and management. In the last 10 years, he has published 36 books. One of my favorite books of his is Leadership is a Personal Choice. In this episode, we are going to talk about that book. And we are also going to talk about the qualities and the traits of a good leader. We are also going to talk about the best way to inspire others as a leader and much more. So stay tuned. Before we your work, and I benefited a lot by reading your books. And one of my favorite books is Leadership is a Personal Choice. And my intention today is to talk to you about a leadership and to start with what inspired you to write that book, Leadership is a Personal Choice.
You know what inspired me to write the book is because I constantly keep hearing people talking about bad leaders and saying that we need good leaders, we don't have good leaders, we have this problem, that problem, and so on. And looking at it, I thought about this quite a lot, and I came to the conclusion that at the end of the day, yes, we need good leaders, but who are those good leaders? They are people who decide to take some action, who have decided that given the situation, what is it that I can do to contribute to that situation? So I said to myself that then leadership, where does it begin? It begins with me. So I said leadership is a personal choice. You choose to be a leader or you choose not to be a leader. I remember a conversation that I had with a very famous consultant in the US many years ago. And he is a teacher, professor in one of the big universities in the US. And we were talking about entrepreneurship because the other book of mine is an entrepreneur's diary.
Yeah.
So talking about entrepreneurship, and he says to me, if I was thinking of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial countries, India would not even be in the first 20.
Okay.
So apart from that comment being rather rude, I said to him that I want you to define entrepreneurship for me. Because to me, a village woman who wakes up in the morning, takes a basket on her head, goes to the market, buys vegetables, sells them to different people. She goes from house to house, she sells those vegetables. She's providing a service to the housewives, to the families by bringing the vegetables to their doorstep. She charges a small premium on those vegetables, that's her margin. And at the end of the day, she has money to feed her family, and she has some money left over to buy some more vegetables the next morning. I said, to me, I cannot find a finer example of entrepreneurship than this.
Yeah.
Here is a woman who is, within quotes, illiterate, yet she has the business acumen to be able to do this day in and day out. She has the patience and she has the risk-taking ability. She's not begging on the street, which she can also do. She's not even working in somebody's house as a maid or a cleaner or something. She's decided to do business on her own. And with that business, she's able to feed her family. I said, find me a better example than this. Now, obviously, he had nothing to say about that. But that's my point. That here is my point. That here is a person who, if you take a list of, if you tell me, okay, give me a list of things that a person should have to be a leader, I don't think this woman will fit into that at all. I don't think she will even have one of those things that anybody would list as leadership qualities. Yet she is a leader because she is taking responsibility for herself. She is taking responsibility for her own fate. She is taking responsibility for her family. and for her own fate. She's taking responsibility for her family, and she's getting out there and she's doing something about it. So I said, this is, to me, therefore, this is example of why I say that leadership is a personal choice. Given whatever situation, all of us are faced with assets, we are faced with facilities, we are faced with things that go against it by constraints. Now it's up to us how we choose to see that. We can see the choice as being full of constraints, therefore I can't do anything. Or we can see the choice as saying, all right, so there are some constraints, but I also have some strengths. How do I overcome those constraints? And I continue. I mean, that's the choice.
So how do you come about having that kind of mindset? Like, I can take action, I can do something about my circumstances. What is the mindset needed in order to do that?
I think that mindset comprises, and confidence comes from looking at your own life, for one thing, and saying, what are the different hurdles that I was able to overcome in my life? And that's the reason why I am very, very convinced that journal writing is a very important aspect of life. One must write down one's, one's memories, or rather one's experiences, and not just write down saying 7th of August, this is what I had a interview with my brother Adam. But so what? So what did you learn from that? How did that help? What was good? What was not good? So it's not just recording of events, but it's saying, how is that event important for me that I did? It's not so much about the dates and so on. So when you look back over your life, you will find that everybody, you have overcome difficulties, but no problem. You're still up and walking, and this gives you confidence. Number one. Number two, the other thing which gives confidence is to look around you and look at other people, because then we find, for example, when I first went for Hajj in 1997, one of my most powerful memories was this lady she was probably either Somali or Sudani or something, maybe Somali. She was crawling in Tawaf.
Subhanallah.
So this lady is on all fours, and she has a baby which is strapped, to her belly. So she has a baby. Now some people said, "Oh, but she's doing that to beg." I said, "Look, I'm not going into all of that. I'm not going to, do a physical examination and say, can you really walk? You can't walk." I'm saying, here am I making tawaf, and I'm feeling, oh my God, big crowd. I'm getting tired. Here is this lady. She is crawling. She's on all fours, and she's also. So now this gives me confidence. Alhamdulillah, if somebody with even in a much more difficult situation can do it, then what's to prevent me from doing it? So confidence is a combination of two things. One is to look at your own life, and the second one is to look at others. The second element of what you asked me is to have faith. In our case, to say faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to say that Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis sabri was salah. So therefore, if I am going to have sabr, which means my interpretation of sabr is to make the maximum and the best effort that I can make. Sabr is I don't interpret sabr as just sitting there doing nothing. Sabr is to make the best effort that you can make, and I can give you the reason why I say that. Was salah, and that is dua, and salah as in salat as well as dua. So now we're saying that here and salah as in salat as well as dua. So now we're saying that here I am having tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying, Ya Allah, I am making the maximum effort. Now I stand before you and I ask you, please help me. So I think these two things together, when you put together, that gives you the initiative and the courage to go forward.
I like what you said about journaling, and I also read your book, This Is My Life. And in that book, subhanallah, your life you had a rich experiences, and it was amazing to read about your life, about your work, about the countries you visited, people you met, because you write down those experiences and what you have learned from those experiences. You were able to put down those into a book. So that gave me this idea that everyone, Allah has blessed us with rich life experiences. All we need to do is to write them down for ourselves, inshallah.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
And I like also the sabr is not sitting alone, sitting and hoping things to change. You have to have sabr and take action as well.
Yes. I in case somebody asks you this question, how did I arrive at this thing to say sabr means to take action? If in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Allah mentioned sabirin, and Allah said that 10 sabirin are equal to 100 and 100 are equal to 1,000 and so on. Now, there the term sabirin refers to mujahideen. Now, if you look at it, here is a soldier on the field of battle. There is nothing that is more action oriented than that. Here is somebody who has committed, who's totally and fully committed to the task, to the goal, and he has put everything into it, including his own life is at stake. So he put everything into it, including his own life is at stake. So he is full of action. Allah is calling this sabr. So I'm saying sabr is not simply to sit there and say, something will happen. Nothing will happen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the laws, and the laws are that to get something, you must do something. And so therefore, make every effort, look at all the avenues that are available to you, make every effort, and then of course, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives success,
inshallah. I want to take you back when you said leadership is personal choice, and you also mentioned we have so much bad leaders. We lack in leadership, especially in Muslim community. So I wonder, what is the choice the bad leaders have made to not to be a good leaders? Is that the choice they have made? How do you see that?
I think now I'm obviously generalizing because it's a very big question. I think the biggest problem with bad leadership is short-term thinking. Our leaders, and today it's not just our leaders. This is seems to be the problem with leadership practically with every community. I mean, I wish we can't claim any more special status for bad leaders. Everybody's got bad leaders. So, okay. And I think the problem with all of them is the same, which is very short-term thinking. They are taking decisions which take for example global warming, take for example the arms race, take for example gun control, take for example the shortcuts we take in education, take for example the fact that we have practically zero focus on ethics and morals and values as far as especially as far as school education is concerned. We only seem to think that teaching maths and science and English language is all that is required. Now, all of these point to only one thing, which is short-term thinking. Now, why on earth would you? Why would you do that? Because you know where that is leading. Yet we still do that because it makes, for some people, it's a way of making money. Shale oil is money for some people. Therefore, you take the step, you destroy the tundra. It doesn't matter. You're not looking at the long-term effects of this. You're not saying if we do this, we are all of us, including those people making that money today. Everybody is going to suffer. We are not looking at that. We are saying now I can make money. I do money. Now I think this is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is this very, very short-term thinking. Now, in addition to that, if you look at Muslim leaders, we should also be thinking in terms of our akhirah and saying, what happens to my afterlife? What happens to my life in the hereafter? How do I face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this decision which I have taken today? How will I face Allah when I have to answer for what I am doing? This is an additional responsibility for our leaders. When I have to answer for what I am doing, this is an additional responsibility for our leaders. But obviously, they don't seem to be thinking that. And that's the whole problem with bad leadership. I think all leaders, Muslim or otherwise, they need to think in the long term. They have to say, we are taking a decision today, but how is this decision going to affect us tomorrow? Today, people are thinking, 20 years, I will not even be here. What do I care? I get this thing now, that's finished. But that's a very bad way of thinking. I mean, that's a very, very short-term way of thinking, an extremely bad way of thinking. We can't think in terms of our own future, our own lifetime, or even our children. We have to think in terms of long-term meaning, even from the worldly sense. We have to say what is good in the foreseeable future as much as I know. And as far as Muslims are concerned, we have to also think in much longer than that, which is to say, how will this thing affect me in my akhirah, because we are going to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I always say it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, it's going to happen. So the sooner we think about that, the happier we will be, inshallah.
Absolutely. What are some misconceptions about leadership that you have come across in your work?
I think the biggest misconception about leadership is the fact that people think that leadership is what somebody else should do. So people are very good at diagnosing situations. People are very good at saying, this is what I think the king of Saudi Arabia must do. This is what I think President Trump should do. This is what I think. So I tell them, hold on, did the king ask you for your opinion? Now, if he didn't ask you for your opinion, what's the good of this opinion? So stop talking about the king. Talk about yourself and say, what am I going to do? Right? What can I do? Now, if you haven't thought about that, then stop talking completely and go down and sit down and think about what can I do. There's no point. What can I do? There's no point in talking about what somebody else must do. So people are very free with advice. And even if you ask people, if you have a meeting, for example, in any situation, for example, if you say our education system stinks, so what can we do to change the education system? People are very free with advice. This is what I think. This is what I think you should do. So we have to stop them and say, no, I didn't ask you to tell me what I should do. What are you going to do about the education system? You are a father, you are a mother, you are a teacher. Tell me what is it that you are going? Are you going to stand up and say, all right, I can teach science, and I think I can teach science well, so find me a school. I am willing to come and volunteer 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week, 1 hour in my lifetime to come and teach these children science in a way that they have never learned before. Now, that is the kind of thing that I would look for. People don't seem to. So, big misconception is that leadership is somebody else's job, and my job is to either point a finger and criticize, or to offer some free advice about how they should do it. I think this is a big misconception. You have to understand, leadership is for me. So let me stand up and think and say, well, this is what I can do. And if I can't do, I tell people, if you can't do anything, no problem, just go make dua, right? Or don't waste time by talking about telling people what they should do. I mean, instead of that, just go make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, but I see that it's much easier to give free advice, as you say, to others instead of taking action yourself.
Yep.
And what about, I was thinking before I ask these questions, in Muslim community especially, we have this concept of humbleness. There's a hadith that Prophet ﷺ said, one should not seek a position of leadership. And people try to apply that even in the organizational work. So how shall we see this hadith? And is this concept false humbleness instead of humbleness?
Yeah, I think you said it yourself, which is false humbleness as compared to true humbleness and humility. The hadith, as far as I understand that hadith of Rasulullah, alhamdulillah, the advice of Nabi Sallallahu is the best advice. That refers to what happens today, for example, in elections, which is canvassing, which is exaggerating what you will do. I still have to find a politician who will say that elect me and I will work with you, but you will have to work very hard to better yourself. I mean, nobody says that, right? They will say, you elect me and I'm going to give you jobs and I'm going to give you this and that, and everyone will have a Mercedes before their front door. I mean, you can't do it. There's no way that's going to happen, but you tell lies because you want to get elected. So I think this is the kind of stuff that is meant in this hadith, inshallah. To say that don't go running behind it if you really can contribute, if you really can benefit. Now, people don't know that by looking at your face. So they need to know that. So telling people, look, here is this challenge. I believe I can handle this. I believe I have the ability to do that. Here is my CV. Here is what I have to bring. I think to say that is perfectly fine. I don't think there is a problem with that. And of course, the dalil for this is what Yusuf alayhi salam said to the king we have this in the Quran in Surah Yusuf, where he said to the king that this is what is going to happen, but I know the solution to this of how to stock food in a way that when the famine comes, I cannot prevent the famine is going to happen, but when the famine comes, your people will not suffer if we store corn in this particular manner. And he knew how to do that. He said, store it on the ear, don't take the seeds out and keep it, and so on and so forth. So now the king, obviously, when he looked at Yusuf alayhi salam, he did not know what knowledge he has. So Yusuf alayhi salam had to say that. Now that's not canvassing. He's not saying elect me and do this and do that. That's not canvassing. He's not saying elect me and do this and do that. He's just saying this is what I know. Now this is what I know. This is what I can do. Now to hire me, not hire me, to use me, not use me is your decision. I mean, if you still don't want to use me, no problem. I've got no problem with that. But I will not keep you in darkness. I will not say no. But you see, I have all this knowledge, but I will not mention it to anybody because I'm being humble. No, I don't think you're being humble. I think you are denying people the benefit of your knowledge, benefit of your experience. I don't think we should do that. But at the same time, you're not saying you have to go out there and start shouting from the rooftops, I am the greatest or something. No, let people find that out from your work. But at the same time, if you know something, you can do something. Definitely that should be done, especially in organizational setups, especially in large organizations, big multinationals and so on. I consult with some of them, or with a lot of them, as a matter of fact. This is a very important thing. If you're going to sit quiet in meetings, you don't contribute, you don't respond, people will just pass you by. I mean, they don't have the time to do this great investigation into all your talents. Nobody has the time for that. You have to come up and say or show in some way. You don't have to just say everything like I know this, but just show that by your. One of the best ways to show your talents is to volunteer to help people. I think this is a very. I give this as advice, as career advice to people. Now, how can you become influential in organization? By volunteering to help. So if you have this knowledge, then go out of your way to help people, and people come to know that here's this guy, here's the go-to guy who I can go to if I need help in this area because he has this knowledge. Now, when a position falls vacant, when there is a challenge, people don't have to think twice. They say, no, here's the person. I know this guy. I've been to him 10 times, highly reliable. He has the knowledge, he can do it. And the thing will then come your way. You don't have to go and canvas for that.
Yeah, that's actually great advice, especially for people who are quiet by nature, introverts, shy people. If they just go out and help people, so other people will do the talking for them based on their track records they have.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's say I have a positive message and I want to contribute, so I stand up, take action. As a leader, what is the best way to inspire others to follow me and see the vision I have?
I am a great believer in writing. And as you see, I write all the time, right? I mean, in the last 10 years, I've written 36 books. Yeah. So I think it's something to do, is write down stuff. Because that way, also this takes care of the shy and so on and so forth. Even a shy person can write. So writing helps and so forth. Even a shy person can write. So writing helps you to project what you know. Number two, writing is a beautiful way also of clarifying your thought. So before you speak, if you write and you rewrite and so on and correct it, then what you end up speaking is the essence of all that. So it comes out as very well prepared. It's not just off the cuff. So it makes a big difference. So you must. I advise people do write things down. It records and it helps you to take the message forward. The other thing to do also is, where possible, like this new podcast channel that I started. I sent you the information also that I started last week, which is named after the same book, Leadership is a Personal Choice. And this is a podcast channel. And in this podcast channel, every podcast that you hear in that channel, there is an article that I write the whole article, and then I also speak in the podcast. So there is a complete documentation of what is happening there. If somebody is listening to the podcast, and if they say, well, can I have this? Can I have the text of this? Is there a text? Yes, there is a text. There is a link. Most welcome. Please go there, read it. And then there's a way also of getting back to me. If somebody has any questions, they can write comments on the blog and so on and so forth. So this is a very good way of projecting and showing people what you have. To follow you or not follow you eventually is the decision of the other individual. I don't like to say follow me, because that's not something that I'm not comfortable with things like this. So I don't say that. But if somebody chooses to follow me, that's the choice that they make. And inshallah, they make the choice based on what they see of me through my writings and through my speaking and so on and so forth. I think the same thing applies and through my speaking and so on and so forth. I think the same thing applies. So put the evidence out there, and if the evidence is strong enough, people will follow you. You don't have to actually ask people and say, "Please follow me." Put the evidence out there, and inshallah, that will happen.
Inshallah. And we're going to put down the links for your podcast. It's a great initiative. Alhamdulillah, I have read most of your books, but now I'm super excited about the podcast too, because you can listen while you're walking or going out for exercising. It's a great way to consume information. You don't need to sit down and read. So that's why I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to upcoming episodes, inshallah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to finish off, your mission is to change the world, one mind at a time. So I wanted to know, what is the concrete change that you want to see in the world?
In one line, who is Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? What is so special about his life? What are the kinds of challenges that he faced? How did he deal with them, and so on? And so for that, I've written 2 books. One is called Leadership Lessons from the Life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I will send you the links to both of them. One is called Leadership Lessons from the Life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This book, alhamdulillah, has been translated now into Arabic, Tamil, Malayalam, and Hausa, which is the Nigerian language of the Hausa people. So it's now in 5 languages. And the other book I have written is called Seerah is the Answer. And that book is now also being translated into Tamil as the first, and then probably also into Arabic and so on. Based on these 2 books, I also created 2 courses. There is a 5-day or a 4-day residential leadership course based on leadership lessons from the life of Rasulullah, and that's called Leadership Excellence Course, LEC. I teach this course in different countries in the world. The course based on Seerah is the Answer is called a Seerah Solution course, Seerah Solution Workshop, and the Seerah Solution Workshop is a 2-day non-residential course. So the one is a full 4-day, 5-day residential course. The other one is a 2-day non-residential course. That one also we have taught it I've taught it in many countries, alhamdulillah. We haven't taught either of these courses in the US and Canada yet, but we've taught it in UK, in Australia, India, Malaysia, Nigeria, Kuwait, where else, in Qatar, and South Africa, multiple times South Africa. So all of these courses, alhamdulillah, we have done in many countries. So I think this is my mission, and this is what I would like to leave behind. This is what I would like to do. Why the message of Seerah? Because here was a man, Rasulullah, who had almost no resources. He was alone, and yet he produced the most stupendous results that you can imagine. And the impact of his leadership has lasted for 1400 years, and we are still counting, inshallah, to the Day of Judgment. So I'm saying here is an example of somebody who, if I look at myself and say, what resources do I have? Right now, as I speak, I have more resources than Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had when he projected his message. Therefore, I have no business complaining that I have no resources, because here was Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who had next to nothing, and yet he was able to do this. So nothing, and yet he was able to do this. So how was he able to do that? If we can understand that, and then his whole life was geared towards spreading positivity, spreading goodness all around him. So here was a man who was concerned about everybody, whether that other person was a Muslim or not, it didn't matter. His whole focus was, how can we make life good for everyone, whether they are Muslim or not Muslim, whoever they are, wherever they are, how can we help people in whichever situation they are. I think this is really, if you look at it, happiness and so forth is not rocket science. It's very simple, as long as we follow the basic principles, and those basic principles are beautifully enshrined in the life of Rasulullah.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the world would be better place if we implement those basic principles.
Inshallah, I sincerely believe that, yes, inshallah.
Those basic principles.
Inshallah, I sincerely believe that, yes, inshallah.
Where people can find the courses that you mentioned.
I will send you all the links. Everything is on my website, which is www.yawarbaig.com. That is yawarbaig.com. All the information is on the website. The books are all on Amazon, but you can find all the links on the website as well. So also for the courses, everything is on. We've collected everything in one place so that they don't have to go all over the place for that. So also the podcasts are on the website. So I think that's like one link that is good for everything else. But I will send you also in the email just after the interview the links to all of these things. Inshallah, we look forward to people, inshallah, benefiting from that. And my message is only one request, which is from you and from anyone who is listening to this, inshallah.
Inshallah. May Allah bless you, bless your family, and bless the work you do. Jazakallah khairan for sharing your thoughts about leadership and much more. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Shukran jazilan, jazakallah khairan for thinking of me, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and give you more than what you asked me, inshallah.
Ameen, ameen.
يا هلا ويا